Allow you to still work on e-collar stuff, but you don't have to worry about the rain rack because it's inside.
Alright.
Otherwise, how's she done for the week?
She's been really good.
Okay.
It definitely, like, the days that we go out several times, like 2 or 3 times, she seems to be like better right off the bat. The other times she's fine, and just like, she just gets the first like tap or two, and then she's like, oh, I'm working. Like, I'm in it for the long haul.
Sure.
But she's been pretty good.
Okay.
I think she's been like overall more obedient. Obviously, when the e-collar's on, she's like an angel. What I didn't ask you, but I took a little bit of liberty on, was if we should be tapping her for anything else at all other than our heel practice. And we really didn't do much of it. But we were at a friend's house and they have little kids, and she like can tend to like initially want to play with kids and then realizes they're small and they're fragile and she should play softer. So we put it on like just to make sure. And like the one time we tapped her just because she was like running back and forth with the kids and like thought that like they were dogs that she should be playing with. We like tapped her once and she just like ran over and laid down under the table and stayed there for like 10 minutes until we told her she could get out. So like, apparently she thinks that's what
she was supposed to do.
If we're not moving, I think she thinks that's what she's supposed to do.
Sure.
But yeah, she's been really obedient.
Okay. So when it comes to the correcting behavior stuff, when you tapped her with the kids, what was your intention? Like, well, I know your intention, right, stopping behavior, but what would you have liked her to have done ideally? Was it leave the kids alone, or was it like you could play with the kids but chill out a little bit?
Play with the kids, but like chill out a little bit.
Okay. What was the number you tapped her at?
25 or 30. Like her working number.
Okay. What's the lowest you can
go and get a response out of her? 20.
20? Okay.
Yeah.
So what we do here is it can work a couple of ways. I don't mind that you use it to correct behavior. The only thing I would say is if she's ever off leash in an unenclosed area without any kind of long leash or something, that we don't correct.
Okay.
Because if, like, let's say you correct, she doesn't feel it, and you turn it up and you correct, and then she really feels it, it might startle her and send her running.
Okay.
Okay. But if you're like in the fenced-in area,
it was a fenced-in backyard.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's always the concern, is that
she could take off because she doesn't quite know.
Correct. Yeah. If we've not done recall, the dog's first instinct is almost always run off. Okay.
The interesting part is when I tapped her, her instinct was to look for me immediately. She seems to have already figured out what this is. She looked for me immediately and like ran over to me and laid down like under the table that I was sitting next to.
Sure.
And she just chilled there.
Yeah, because she's thinking that pocket, you know. Did you praise her?
Yeah.
Okay, don't praise her.
No.
Okay, and I'll explain all that stuff, okay? So, that's perfectly fine. What I would do, so she gave an overreaction, technically, right? Because the goal was, you can play with the kids, just chill out a bit, right? But since it was more at that working number, she was more cautious, and she's like, you know what, I'm just gonna go all the way over here to be on the safe side, right? So when we praise her, she's thinking, that's what I do.
That's what I should do.
In response, correct. So I always just ignore the dog, and I don't give him any attention.
Got it.
So eventually, we correct her, and she's like, I come over here and I never get any affection from you, right? No acknowledgement that this is what I'm supposed to do. What happens if you correct me and I just chill and hang out with the kids?
She just thinks that's what she's
Right.
like. That just sort of subliminally becomes like behavior as opposed to like trying to earn affection or praise.
Right.
It just becomes like norm.
Right. When you praise, you're telling her, yes, do that again. Right? So every time you tap her, she always runs to you and you praise her. She will never learn to coexist with the children.
Got it.
Okay, so eventually you'll tap her one day and she's gonna go like, well, I always go to you, I don't get acknowledged, so what happens if I just stay here?
And then she won't even play with the kids.
Yeah, and she plays with the kids. So
she's fine with the kids like 99% of the time.
Sure.
It's just when the kids will like, the kid will like pull her tail and then like take off running, and then she runs with him, and then he runs in the other direction, and she eventually, the lines get like blurred for her between.
She is stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the other thing you could do as well is you go down lower. I might go down to like a 14-ish. So you're trying to still settle her, but not like, to the level where she's thinking she has to come all the way back.
Okay.
So e-collar gets really nuanced. So when I'm in a context where it's like, yes, I need the dog to relax, but I don't want them to come all the way here, we go lower, and then we work our way up. And it's possible, like in the beginning, when you correct them, you'll keep kind of getting this consistent response of her coming to your side, but eventually she's gonna go, well, this never gets me anything, so let me try something else instead, you know? So then if she like calms down and then keeps playing with the kids, which is a reinforcer for her, right, it's a reward, she's like, oh, okay, like that tap didn't mean like leave, it meant like just chill out and then keep playing. So, and we wouldn't put a word to this because you want her to be able to self-regulate to a degree, right? So then she starts to think, like, kid pulls her tail, she starts to play, right? And she can recognize when she's going to that threshold where typically the tap will kick in, and you'll start to see her just kind of stay more at a 4, well, we call it 1 through 10, we go like about a 4.
Okay.
Anything over 5 tends to escalate for dogs. So like here with the dogs when they play, that's why it's quiet when they play, because we don't let them go past 4. Because 5 and above is when scuffles happen. Okay, so it's like in high school, for me there was this game called Slaps. And I remember there was these guys in the restroom, and they were playing slaps with each other, and then one of them just like went too hard, and it started to fight. So it started as a fun game, but then somebody went too hard, also we got a scuffle, right? Same thing for the dogs. They're playing, one dog bites hard, pulls the ear too hard, whatever, other dog goes to crack, the next thing you know, we got a scuffle. So that's why we always keep things to a 1 to 4. And then for dogs and kids, same thing. Once they get to like a 5 and above, they tend to get overstimulated, and that's when they get like really mouthy, or they get really loud and barky and stuff like that, and then people get concerned. So by keeping them under threshold, you're preventing these things from happening. And she'll learn like, oh, when I play with the kids, like I can go to 4, but even if they pull my tail, it doesn't mean I can go over that. I gotta keep it down here, okay?
Yeah, the thing was after we did that, like the whole rest of the afternoon, they went back to doing the same things, but she was like, she didn't quite get up to a 5 or whatever. So
Yeah, good.
it worked. That didn't like happen, and then she came running over to us to like come hide because she's afraid she was gonna get tapped. She definitely was just like a little more cautious.
Trying to figure it out, yeah. And that's how dogs learn. Because everybody's like, oh, the dog was confused, or like, the dog doesn't know what to do. I'm like, but there's no way to tell them.
Yeah.
It's just, it's correction, and then repeat until the dog figures out what's allowed and what's not allowed, okay? So that's good. And it should be like that kind of effective or efficient. That's why I would say.
So no praise and low number.
Low number and don't say anything.
Don't say anything.
Right, like I wouldn't say no, and then tap her. Because then technically she can do the behavior until you say no. Alright, so like a kid, you can take them to the playground and say like, hey, you can play here, but you can't scream, right? And the kid knows to run around and they can't go to that vocal level, right? For dogs, like they don't do that. They don't understand that conversation. So
the word she would wait to hear as opposed to the tap, she's always thinking in the back of her mind that the tap's there.
yes, the only way to avoid the tap is not to do it.
Got it.
So like this red light here, it's a camera red light. So I know that from experience. So I know they're on their red light because there was just an automatic flash and then a ticket in the mail, right? So now that deters me because I know the only way to avoid that is to stop at that red light. No one came up to me and said like, hey, by the way, there's a red light camera right here, right? There's no warning beforehand. So for dogs, technically they can perform the behavior until you give the cue. Okay, so when we want to eliminate, we always simply correct. When we want to control, we need a cue first, followed by the correction. So like, let's say barking in the home, let's say you don't mind as she barks out the window, you just want her to stop when you tell her to, right? So this way, if you go and you check and she's barking at something, you're like, yeah, you should be barking at this. You ignore it, she just keeps barking. But then the next time she barks and I go, I'm like, nope, quiet, she stops barking, right? So I'm like, you can bark, but when I tell you to quiet, you stop barking. But that would be every context. Or there's, I don't want you to bark, period, out the window. That's eliminate, and then the other is control, okay?
The barking out the windows, big one. That's the next
next thing
we want to work on.
Sure, and I can send you some videos. So the problem with using the e-collar for correcting barking within the home is, remember, the e-collar is like a cop on a collar, is it'll make you now dependent on it, right? So then in the home, she's got the collar on, she's great, she's not barking.
And she needs the
And you remove it, she's barking, right? So there's an alternate means of correction that we send to people. It's 3 videos. How to make one, how to use one, and a trainer actively using one. And definitely one, if you're gonna watch any of them, watch that 3rd one. Because, so the pro of e-collar is that it's very simple, it's very logical, off-leash training, off-leash control right off the bat, all that stuff. No confrontation, okay? So the dog doesn't know where it's coming from. But that's also a con to the e-collar, is the fact there is no confrontation. So she's respecting the tool more so than she is respecting you, right? So then, the correctional tool that we use with the dogs without e-collar is what's called a bonker. Okay, she's a roll-up towel, and you can use rubber bands, hair bands, or zip ties to keep it shaped so it makes a firm and cylinder-like object. And I usually recommend that people make like 2 to 3 of them. Okay, and you literally use it to bonk the dog. So like if I'm sitting down and she starts barking out the window, you want to first always think, do I want to control this or eliminate this, right? If the answer is eliminate, you simply would correct with no warning. If the answer is control, cue of quiet, whatever your word is, enough, and then the correction. Okay, so then technically she can bark until you give that cue. And even if you eliminate the barking, okay, you're eliminating the barking when you're present. She would still bark when you're not present, okay, because now it's time to you. Because people always worry about that. Am I going to kill my security? I go, no. So because it's all about context. The dog learns when dad's around, I get corrected when they bark. When dad's not around, they bark and they don't get corrected.
The weird part is, we have nest cameras in our house. She doesn't bark when I'm not around.
Mm-hmm. So she's one of those.
Yeah, so, and the weird part is, she never barked as a puppy,
Mm-hmm.
like at all, because we, against someone who told us it was a bad idea, we did it anyways. We put coins in a mason jar.
Sure.
And when she was barking to go out, to go potty off the balcony, which is where she has a patch of grass, she got to go out, she was rewarded for doing it, whatever, clap, treat, cheered. Whenever she barked anywhere else other than that door, we would shake the jar of coins and she would stop immediately.
Okay.
So for maybe a week after we got her until a month or 2 ago, she didn't bark for no reason at all. And then she just started out of nowhere.
How old is she now?
She's almost a year. She's
Okay. Yeah.
She's a year next week.
So she's going to teenager phase. So that's why. So 6 months in a year are 2 pivotal personality shifts for a dog. 6 months is like terrible 2's brain, teenager body. A year is teenager brain, adult body. 2 years is adult dog. Okay. So that's why. Is now she's coming into her own. If you use the can of pennies again, you can see if she's still receptive to it.
She is.
So then you do the same thing. Instead of doing the correction with the bonker, you can use the can of pennies, but then you want to track, is the can of pennies stopping and deterring, right? Because that's the big thing now. So like,
Just stop it.
exactly. So like for me growing up, because I was spanked when I became a teenager, I remember my mom tried to spank me, but I was bigger, you know. So I remember I laughed because it was like not as effective. So then my mom she had to compensate, and she's like, just kept spanking me until eventually it did hurt. So I learned that lesson. I was like, all right. She's like, see, right? So, but that if she hadn't done that, it wouldn't have been effective for me, right? So if you bring back the can of pennies and you're like, dad stops her, but she keeps barking and it's not like it was before, then we go to the physical correction of the bonker, okay? Because the dogs are all about that physicality. So the bonker is now tied to you, okay? Because it's you correcting your dog. So now the respect factor, it bridges the gap or it's like the bridge between the e-collar and no e-collar for things within the home. You would only use the bonker or the can of pennies to stop things you do not want. You would not use it for obedience, okay? So if you told her...
And that's the only context that we have used it, so.
Correct, yeah. So for like let's say you said sit, she didn't sit, you wouldn't shake the can of pennies, okay? That would be all the work stuff.
Yep.
So anything you don't want her to do, jumping, barking, licking, chewing, nipping, biting, whining, counter surfing, you can use the can of pennies, and if you feel like it's stopping and deterring, you're good. And it should always start to go down in terms of the dog's repeating behavior. If it doesn't, and you feel like it's staying static, then we go to the next one. Okay? Other questions?
I think that was it. On our walks, so what I was doing to refamiliarize, especially the first time of the day that she got walked with the e-collar on, obviously, we have an alley behind our house, so I started in the alley. And I did like our turning exercise, just to like remind her like what we're doing, that she's following me, and like reestablish all those concepts, and then go out on a walk. When we're out on the walk and she gets out ahead of me, and like so she's not following, should I be doing turnaround?
Turn and tap, correct.
Turn and tap. Okay.
Yep. So that turn and tap is forever a thing that we do,
Got it.
but it should be becoming less, right? So like if I was walking my dogs, and like they got ahead of me, I would still turn it correct. The only time I wouldn't is if there was like people behind me, and I don't have the capacity to turn, or if like you're crossing the street, right, and you're like, you can't turn because you're in the middle of traffic.
What do you do?
Then you just, you know, you can tap to like slow the dog down, but it's more like a little Band-Aid fix.
Okay.
If you feel like you're turning and tapping regularly, and it's like
Just at the beginning of the walk.
Okay.
And that's why I've been starting in the alley.
At what number do you end at on your collar, on your walks? When you say she's like perfect.
We've never had to go above 40 or 45.
Okay. How many times have you gone to 40, 45?
Not very often.
Okay. What's the next highest number that you would say that you've gotten more consistently?
35.
35? I would start my walks with 35.
Okay.
Okay. So what we do is, let's say you find that working number and you always get connection at 10 to 15 and you get the response, right? And she comes to your side. And when you start your walk, you know, you start at 15, but then you always find yourself ending at 35 before she's really, really good.
It's actually like the other way around. Start high and work her way down because there are no problems by the end of the walk.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Because, so normally, are you saying you're starting higher and going down?
Yeah, you were saying start lower and then work your way up.
In the beginning.
In the beginning.
Right, because remember, it's find the working number, start your walk, and then if she keeps passing, you just gradually bump it until you find 35, right? And if you do that every walk where you find you're at 35, and then she's perfect, then we just start walks at 35, right? Now, the issue with going higher than lower is she's gonna pick up on that pattern, okay? So over time, she'll start great, but then you're gonna start to see her take leniencies, or not leniencies, just take privileges when you go lower. So what we do is we go higher, right? So 35, for example, and we just keep it there. And what you'll find is you're gonna do your first turn and tap, and then for the next 30 minutes, she's on your leg, no problem, right? And then you start your next walk, and you don't even need to turn and tap. She's just boom, right there. So then you start to find, like, oh wow, like I've only had to turn and tap once this week, and then the next week once, and then it's 2 weeks before you have to turn and tap. Is you're gonna see bigger gaps between every correctional turn with the tap, because the 35 is a big enough of a motivator for her to not only get her to do it the first time, but to continue to do it, even without the tap, for all the other walks.
Okay.
Okay? So that's what I would do. Is if you've been going to 35 more consistently, and 40 to 45 is kind of like the rare occasion, I just jump out at 35. Now let's say you jump out at 35 and you get a yip, okay? I would ignore it the first time, because it could be her used to lower and then higher, and then since you just jump right out to 35, surprise, exactly. So then after that, let's say you correct her 2 more times and she takes it but she doesn't yip, then it was just a surprise factor, okay? And then we'll just keep tabs on how well is she doing with the walks, and everything that we do, whether it's stopping a behavior or teaching a behavior, the number of corrections or reinforcers should start to go down, okay? And then you'll start to see bigger gaps between her barking out the window and bigger gaps between her needing to, or her passing you, because you're starting at a higher level, okay? Anything else?
I don't think so. I think that's it.
Okay, so what we're going to teach today is stationary control. We teach the place command, so there's 6 formal obedience commands: sit, stay, down, come, place, heel. So last week we covered the first half of heel. Today we're going to cover place, which is something you can practice inside at home. So if it's raining, you don't got to worry about it. You have something you can practice indoors. This comes in pretty handy for like clients that want to take their dog with them to like a restaurant, or if, when guests come over and the dog's too excited and just want to contain them,
Yeah.
so not jumping all over the guest.
We get a lot of that with her.
Okay.
And we figured out that it's nervous jumping.
Sure.
More so than like excitement jumping.
Gotcha, sure. So then we're like, let's say the kids are over and there's too many kids and it's overwhelming and you want her to just stay put. We got this as well, okay? So the place command is one of the 3 stationary commands, because sit, down, and place are all stationary. Down and sit are very specific. So like that would be a down position, and she couldn't do anything but that. She can't sit up and she can't stand up. Sit, of course, is this, and she can't stand up nor can she lay down. She has to maintain that sitting position. Place command is real simple. Go here and stay within the space, and I don't care what you do. Sit, stand, lay down, chew on the bone, play with a toy. Just do not step off the object, okay? So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna teach her that when she feels the e-collar, that going to this object turns off the e-collar, okay? What number are you currently set at?
30.
Let's go down to 18. All right, so you're gonna bring her over, and we're gonna start first at about a square away here. And we're gonna start initially with tapping first. We're gonna do 2 to 3 taps first to see what will she do, okay? Every now and then I'll get a dog that when they feel the tap, they'll just go directly to the bed. So then we just take advantage of that, praise them, and they progress faster. If she doesn't do anything by that second to third tap, you're gonna keep tapping, but then you're gonna start to pull with your leash to direct her onto the object, okay? In the beginning, not uncommon, we're gonna see resistance, where she's gonna go like this because she goes, I don't know what this thing is, okay? So I usually step on the bed to brace it, let me pull forward and tap and put a little bit more physical pressure on her to bring her on. Once she's completely on, we stop tapping. If she overshoots, you would put counter pressure, start tapping to bring her on. She steps off, counter pressure, tapping to bring her on. And once she stays there for a couple of seconds, good girl, break, and then we would move backwards to remove her, okay? So we're not saying place or anything right now. By the end of class, we'll be using the word, but right now we wanna make sure that the tap itself is what's getting her to leave your side to go to the object, okay? So go ahead and come in close. You're gonna start about a square away here. And then don't worry about heel 2 with this exercise.
Okay.
Yeah. So just come, go right there. And you'll stop about a square away.
Okay.
Any direction. There you go, right there. So here you're going to tap, 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 and now pull, tap. There you go. Wait a second. Let me see something here. Just a heads up, your collar's gonna die.
Oh, really?
Do you know the last time you charged it?
A few days ago.
How often do you use it? You should be good for the class, but just so you know, just heads up.
Every day.
Okay. Charge it, if you charge it every time in the morning for like 10, 15
I
minutes.
didn't realize it needed to be charged that often.
No,
So
usually-
this only shows you the battery for
Yes, it's for the remote. Yeah, it's for the remote. Yeah, so week to week and a half, depending on how often you use it. So if you're doing a lot of walks and stuff, the collar tends to die faster than the remote.
Okay.
Okay, but this is a 2-hour quick charge system, so you go home within a couple
Okay.
hours, you're gonna have a fully charged collar.
Cool.
Okay, so usually what I recommend to people, you know, every other morning, pop it in for 30 minutes and you should keep it fully charged. Okay, so now you're gonna say the word break, and you're gonna move backwards.
Break.
Good. And you're gonna come back and present her back to the same spot. Come to a stop. And then if you start to see her prematurely going to the object, you're gonna use your leash to restrain her and prevent her from doing so, okay? And you're gonna keep still here and you're going to tap, 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 tap and pull. There you go, good girl, raise,
Good girl.
and break, move backwards.
Break.
Good, we're gonna do it 3 more times.
Whoa.
That's the, there you go. Wait a second.
Oh.
Good. Come a little bit closer. There you go. Hold right there. That's enough. And tap, tap, tap and pull. Add a girl. Good. Brace.
Good girl.
Good. Breaking backwards.
Break.
Good. Do 2 more.
She's running for the door.
Yeah. She's sliding.
Tap. Tap. Tap.
There you go.
Good girl. Good girl.
1 more.
Okay, break. Tap. Good girl.
Good. So, on tap.
Yeah.
Yep. So here, same concept, but you're gonna start sending her from different directions, but still keeping it about a square away. Okay, so you might send her from over here, you might send her from over here, different spots to the placement.
Okay. Break.
Good.
Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Okay, break.
1 more.
Good girl. Good girl. Break.
Good. 3 more. Good. let's just say break it and then
Break.
Bring her off. Yep. Try again.
Okay, come here.
There we go. Good girl.
Good girl.
One more.
Okay, break. Good girl.
Excellent. So now, same concept, but you're gonna start sending her from a little bit further away. So you'll end up coming to a complete stop at about 2 squares away.
Okay.
You're gonna wait for a moment, okay? Because now she's getting, she's assuming, right?
It's like the fault.
Exactly. So you're gonna stop, see what she does, hold her back if needed, wait a second, let her settle. And then you're gonna start tapping. And we wanna refrain from moving forward as much as we can. So I'd start tapping first. If nothing by the 3rd tap, keep tapping and then pull. If nothing by the 3rd tap, then you can take a little step in to direct her, okay? So you'd walk around, come to a complete stop first, let her settle, and then start the process, okay?
All right, break.
Good. And you want to anchor yourself and not move forward.
Okay.
So all that was correct except you took steps forward.
Okay.
So that would be the last thing that we do.
Oh, she's gonna go all the way forward.
Correct.
I'm gonna stand 2 steps away the whole time.
Correct.
Okay, break. Break. Go to the other side.
Right. 10. There we go. Good.
Good girl.
3 more.
Break. Break.
Good girl. Good. And pull. Good.
Good girl.
You're at 18, correct?
I'm at 18.
Let's go to 21. We're gonna do 2 more.
Break.
Good. Good. Yeah,
Good girl. Good
One
girl.
more.
Break. Break.
Good. Check there. Tap. 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 Tap light pull. There you go. Good. Tap. 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 A little more pull. Tap. Tap. Tiny step forward. There she goes. Good girl.
Good girl.
Now here, we're going to keep her there and go ahead and have a seat. And then you'll keep leashing your hand. All right. So here, we're teaching what we call the send, sending her from your side to the object, okay? And the reason why we do the stationary stuff is we want to make it very obvious that the tap is what's motivating her to go to the object, okay? So here, she's learning when I feel this, it now means to go here. So we're expanding the options to turn off the collar. So when you're on a walk, walking at your side, turns off the collar. Here, leaving your side to go here, turns off the collar, right? So in the beginning, we start super simple, 1 square away, and then we started moving from different directions, and now we're moving it to 2 squares away, which is gradually making it more complicated. The reason why we went from 18 to 21 is I wanted to find a number that was going to incentivize her to think more quickly on what do I need to do to turn this off, okay? So I just kind of gradually keep going up, so I eventually find a number, the dog, I go tap, boom, and it just goes straight there, okay? So 21, I can see she's starting to think, because when you did the first tap, she was kind of doing this thing here. That's showing me she knows she's supposed to do something, she's just not quite made it concrete yet that it means to go to this object. Okay, so by the end of class, ideally, tap, boom, she just goes. So this exercise here, when you practice on your own, you would keep it really short, 3 to 5 minutes. Okay. Today we're gonna go a little bit longer because I'm teaching you to teach her. But the reason why we do 3 to 5 minutes is because then dogs start to get frustrated because they know you're gonna put them in a situation where they're gonna be remoted. So that's why I just started kind of assuming and running there. So then the dog gets frustrated because they're thinking like, well, I know you're gonna just send me to the bed with the tap, so like I wanna go the first to beat it. So then we start to get some frustration there. So I always tell everybody keep it real short, 3 to 5 minutes. You're also welcome to use food here because it's really easy. But I don't use food as an incentive, as like an incentive. Like here's a treat to go here. It would be I use the pressure to get her to go there, and then I would just feed
as a reward.
Exactly. So I make her do the work first, and then I pay her. And when we train with high value stuff: cheese, turkey, bologna, hot dog, sausage, chicken, whatever the dog can handle and enjoys. Because since we train to a higher level, we want to pay the dog appropriately. Okay, and eventually you just kind of wean that away. But it will just help her connect the dots of like tappings to go here and help just kind of reduce some of that stress because she's also getting some kind of reward out of it, okay? In some cases, she might be so stressed out she doesn't take anything, which is normal.
She does that a lot.
Yeah.
Should I give her something now?
If you have something, you can. Yeah, she doesn't want it, right? So this here, her stress levels are too high, she's not caring about it. Now let's say you try to use food as an incentive, as a payment, right? And after a few days, she begins to take it from you, what would that tell you?
She's starting to get more comfortable.
Correct. She's getting more relaxed, and she's like, okay, now I'll take it, right? Because she's starting to understand what this is all about. So, not uncommon in the beginning. So here, we have 2 components to the place command. We have the send, and then we have the stay. Okay, and both those things can be worked on at the same time. You don't have to do one before the other. Okay, so like right now, after training, you could literally go home and have her stay put for 2 hours. She's just going to make mistakes, okay? So when we do the stationary part of this, everybody's application of place command is different. Some people like to use it when guests come over for like the first 15, 20 minutes. Other people go like, yeah, I want to take my dog with me to a restaurant. I'm there for an hour and a half to 2 hours sometimes.
I like both of those.
You know, so then you want to think to yourself, what's the longest that she would have to hold still for, right? And if the answer is at a restaurant for an hour and a half or so, then at home, couple times a week, you want to practice an hour and a half to 2.5 hours straight, a couple times a week, okay? Because if you always do 10 minutes, and then one day you take her to the restaurant, it's like, okay, now stay here for 2 hours. They're too far apart, okay? So you don't have to do 2 hours every day. You're just kind of 2 to 3 times a week putting that in there, so she's like, this is something that I would do for this period of time.
And slowly build her up to that? No.
You can do 2 hours right now.
And when she messes up, you correct her?
Correct.
Tap her until she goes back, or you lead her back and
both.
Tap her a few times if she doesn't get back there, and then when she goes back there, then you reward her. You reward her? Or?
No. So here, we always start with the dog next to us. Right? Everything will always be with the collar on, leash on, e-collar stuff, right? So if I have
in the house.
In the house, yep. So if I'm on the couch, I'm gonna watch TV, and I know I'm gonna watch a movie. It's like 2 hours long, right? I bring the bed, pop it down, place, tap. She goes. 20 minutes later, she gets bored. She tries to get off. I don't say anything. I just start to tap, and if she gets confused and doesn't know what to do, I can use the leash to guide her. Okay. So I always keep you with pressure first before the leash, because if you always use the leash first, you're doing part of the work that she will become reliant on it. And I want her to do all the mental work. Like, okay, when I feel this, I can stop it faster if I just go back where I was. So I know if I sit still for 2 hours, she's gonna make mistakes. She's gonna wanna hop off. So then 20 minutes in, she tries to get off, I tap, I correct her, she goes back, I go back to watching TV. 15 minutes later, she tries to get off, I tap, she goes back, I go back to watching TV, right? So she has to try breaking the command and being corrected for it to learn that leaving the object is not an option. Because dogs have to perform the behavior and have a negative attached to it in order to learn that's not an option. So with the kids, she was running and playing around with them, got a little too intense. That's not an option, right? And as we keep repeating that, she's gonna learn 5 and above is not allowed, 4 to 1 is allowed. Okay, and you're gonna start altering like that. So you're altering behavior like that. Same with place command. I send her to place and she goes, okay, place means to go here, but place also means don't get off of here. Okay, so for a child or a human, you can say, hey, go to that room and don't come out. And we know not to do that, right? And then they might say like, go to your room and don't come out or you get spanked. And we know that we can attach all those things together, right? So I go, if I don't want to get spanked, I'm just not gonna leave my room. She doesn't. She has to attempt the behavior and have the consequence to learn that, oh, okay, well, I did try it, but that thing came back and didn't stop, so I went back to my bed anyways. Okay, so I'm just gonna stay put here until she gets bored or until she decides I don't want to do this anymore. She attempts again. It's like, nope, can't do that either. That's why we always start right here. Super easy. A lot of my clients like to skip steps and they'll put the dog across the room, right? And then they'll come back the next week and I'm like, how was it this week? They're like, oh, Jesse was terrible. We have to like keep correcting the dog. And I was like, yeah, it's part of the process. They're like, yeah, but we keep having to walk the dog back. I was like, why did you have to walk the dog back? The dog should have been right here. They're like, oh, because we put the dog across the room. I'm like, well, that's why it was a lot of work. Because you just taught the behavior and now you have to correct the dog getting off the object, but you're not at that stage yet. You always start here, because I don't even have to get up off my seat. If I'm watching TV, if I'm working from home, if I'm reading a book, eating lunch, eating dinner, anytime I'm just sitting down being stationary and can have a leash nearby or in my hand or on, if I can step on it, I can practice duration work, okay? So you don't have to do 5 minutes to 10 minutes to 15 minutes. You simply just decide, I'm gonna do 30 minutes right now. And if she does 30 minutes completely, great. If she does it, you correct her, and it takes 2 corrections, great. Now she just learned, if I try to break off in 30 minutes, I'll get 2 corrections, right? Same thing for if you do 2 hours. She might try to get off multiple times, because the longer you start to push that time frame, she might get a little antsy. But in order for her to learn how to contain herself and get over the antsiness, you have to push for that, okay? So when it comes to the stationary component, you can do this as many times a day as you like. You can do it when you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can do it while you watch TV, and if you're working out from home. Anytime you can just be right there and correct her, you can do this because it's not repetitive. It's just go here. And the only time she's gonna feel more remote would be if she tries to get off. The sending and breaking exercise, place, break, place, break, place, break, that's redundant, that's repetitive. That's pressure, pressure, pressure. That will frustrate her. That would keep 3 to 5 minutes, okay? So the exercise that we just did is to teach her how to go to place easily and consistently. Tap, boom, she just shoots there, okay? So once I have that, I go, great, you got it down. We don't need to practice this anymore. You already know what to do. Now we just do application. But you can do the repetitive exercise and the application at the same time. You don't have to do one first before you start the other, okay?
But we should use a physical place for her.
Correct.
So like a bed, like her bed. Or...
Correct. So place is super versatile. It can be her dog bed, it can be an ottoman, it could be a kitchen mat, a towel, a blanket, a yoga mat.
Until we use a word, it's all going to be trial and error for her, right?
No, we're going to be using the word by the end of class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it could be, so if you walk into someone's home and they say have a seat, and you see a couch, you see a bar stool, and you see a kitchen chair, you know I have 3 options, right? And you can pick and choose. Dogs don't do that. So if you went home and she's got her dog bed and you said place, she probably wouldn't go there, okay? Because she thinks place is this object. So you have to transfer what you just did to that object, okay? So now that opens up her, right, her concept, and she goes, okay, this at Jesse's is place, and this at home is place, okay? Now, if you always use her dog bed, she will think place is solely
one object.
Her object, right? So some people will have a bed in the living room, a bed in the dining room, and a bed in the bedroom. And if you're in the bedroom and you said place, she'd go to the one in the bedroom. She wouldn't go to the one in the living room. If you said place in the living room, she'd go to the one in the living room, okay? Because she's going by context. Some clients will have one object that they move from room to room. So then the dog just thinks place is this particular object. And if I'm in the bedroom and I say, you say place, I look for the object within the bedroom, okay? You can also have more than one place within a room. So you can have a bed here and a bed here, and you can differentiate between them by pointing to the one she needs to go to, or different words. That can be place and that can be go to your bed. And she'll learn to differentiate that way. Some clients will have one centralized object for the entire home. So if it's in the living room and you're in the bedroom and you say place, she'd run to the living room to go to that object, okay? So everybody's use is different. Two most common ones are, there's one in the rooms that the dog is in a lot, or they'll have one object that they move from room to room, okay? Let's say you want to take her out to a restaurant and you don't want to bring her dog bed, but you got like a towel or something. It just needs to be something that sets a perimeter. That's it. So if you pointed to a corner and said place, that wouldn't work for her because she has nothing that distinguishes where does it end this way, okay? So if you go to a restaurant and you say place and it's just concrete, she's gonna go, where does it end? Okay, so then you just pop a towel down, pop a blanket down. If you want to bring a dog bed place, she would go there. And now she's like, okay, I have my perimeter, and she can sit, stand, lay down. She just can't step off. So if let's say she's laying down, and someone goes, oh my God, you have a cute dog, can I pet her? I'm like, sure. They come over and they pet her, she sits up. That would be okay, because she's not in a down command, she's in a place command. If she were in a down command, we would have to correct that, because now she's breaking position. So this is why I like to teach this first, because it's easier for people to reinforce. So if you're at the restaurant, you don't want to have to be like super like paranoid on what my dog is doing, right? So by sending her to place, she has options, and it's much easier. Tap, 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 and lightly pull. Yep, yep, tap, yep, yep. There we go. Tap, tap, yeah. There she goes. Good girl.
Good girl.
Yeah, she has more options. So then as long as you look and you're like, yep, she's within the perimeter, we're good. When it comes to rewarding, we reward for the performance and the end of a performance, but we don't reward for corrections. Because some dogs, it's rare, but some dogs will learn, hey, every time I hop off, I'll get the tap, but then I'll get something out of it.
And they associate the wrong thing.
Correct. So we reward for place, boom, good girl. And let's say she's been there for 30 minutes, break, reward, good girl, right? So for the initial performance and then for the ending performance, but never for a correction, okay? And like right here, how you handled it, if you saw her kind of get tired, then she's like, okay, I've had enough of this. She tries to get off, you started correcting, but right now she favored going to you. You kept tapping, you didn't say anything, gave her some pressure, she needed a little bit more. She hopped on, but now she's in a more comfortable state. Because she's thinking, well, I sat there for a while not wanting to be here and I popped off. But then I got the correction, so, and I'm back where I was, so I might as well just be more comfortable. Okay?
She's already calmer than she was before she hopped off.
Right. Because the brain has to try the option and have the negative to learn that it's not an option. And when we remove options, it actually calms dogs down. One of the biggest problems the dogs that I work with have is overstimulation due to too many options. I can sniff this, I can pull here, I can pee on that, I can poop on that, I can bark on that, I can jump on you, I can sniff that, like all these options, and the dog is overwhelmed. And they're so overwhelmed that they become frustrated and leads to stress. Okay, here, she had the option, she hadn't tried it quite yet, of trying to sneak off. And you tapped her and said that is not an option. She's like, okay, well I guess I can't think about that anymore. I just tried it, she got corrected. Okay? So the rate of corrections again should always go down. Same thing for this. So right there she held for like 5 to 10 minutes. So then let's say when you do this, so you're at 21, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say 21, she gets off every 10 minutes. She goes back and she gets off every 10 minutes. What does that tell us?
It's not.
Correct. I go to 24, right? 25, whatever. And then I go, okay, 24 gets me, 20 minutes, but it's still every 20 minutes. 27, it just keep going up. So eventually you hit like 35 and you're like, I'm 35. She's been there for 2 hours. She's not trying to get off. Then 35 is most likely that number that will keep her there for a period of time. But at the same time, the next time you utilize the command, there is no correction. She's carrying over what she went before and just holds for 2 hours. Okay? So in the beginning, always nearby, make it super easy for yourself. Okay? Now, at this stage, if you need to get up to do something while she's in place, unless someone can help like tag team and like can take the leash and the e-collar from you while you go do your thing, let's say you're gonna go to the kitchen, you would release her first, break, and then get up to go to the kitchen, okay? You could bring her back and replace her, or she can be done. You pick and choose. The reason why we wanna release first before we get up is if you get up and then release, she's gonna think every time you stand up, you're gonna release her, okay? So to avoid that pattern, we flip it, okay? By the second week, if you're practicing this regularly and you feel she's doing really well, second week we're still close to each other, but now I'm gonna get up. She shouldn't move. If she does, I correct her. But it should be much easier for her to hold this position because she's already done it for a week. So then I can go to the kitchen, make myself some sandwich or something, come back, and she's still there. By week 3, we're doing a little bit more of a distance. Leash still on, nearby, so if you need to grab it, but you can get up and move more freely, work out, do yoga, clean, vacuum, mop, move things around, whatever. As a distraction, she should hold still. And by the 4th week, she's completely opposite in the room in the corner or whatever, and you're getting up and leaving the room and going upstairs and all that stuff, and she's staying put, still with the leash on. Some clients will like to use a long leash. And then if that's going really, really well, then by the 5th week, you can have her in place and she doesn't need the leash. Because we know when we tap her, she'll go straight there. If you remove the leash too soon, she's gonna know she has more options. And she's gonna try to sneak off, and you're gonna tap her, she's gonna take off on you. Okay, so that's why right now we keep the leash on, because we wanna eliminate that as an option for now. Questions about any of that?
We're obviously layering this in while also working on our heel stuff.
Correct.
Well, it doesn't have a word yet, but our actions for heel.
Correct. So when you're doing your walks, they stay the same. You just keep training while you do them. And then when it comes to applying in place, it's just figuring out like, when am I going to just be doing nothing? That I can just call her up and have her stay put for a bit. You can do 15 minutes one day, 2 hours the next day, 30 minutes the next day, 30 minutes the next day, 2.5 hours the next day. Doesn't have to be a pattern. But if you do want her to be able to do an hour and a half to 2.5 hours outside at a restaurant with the waiter, the waitress, food, dogs, people, scents, sounds, is you definitely want to go for that time frame plus a little bit longer as a complete session. Okay, because if you do 30 minutes here and there and you do 2.5 in total for the day, it's broken up. She's not going to know how to stay put for an extended period of time. So at least 2 to 3 times a week, I recommend you go up in that range that you would want her to be able to hold it for. And all the other days, you can do shorter ones. And of course, you can do this multiple times a day if you'd like as well. If you're going to be using the collar more frequently now, because now you're doing inside stuff, you would want to rotate the collar every 2 hours, or just make sure you use a different side every time you use it, okay, because of the pressure source. So that's not from the stem, it's from 2 probes poking into the knife for an extended period of time. So if she's going to be here for 3 hours, hour and a half in, I'll just rotate the collar, move to the other side. Hour and a half later, I remove it, she's good to go, and the next time I put it on the other side. So I'm switching each side when we use it and rotating in when we hit the hour and a half to 2 hour ranges to prevent pressure source from happening. Questions?
She can have something to play with.
Yep.
Or something to chew on.
Yep. As long as she stays within the perimeter, she can. So I had a client.
She wants.
Exactly. I had a client who had a really big area rug, and he's like, "Can that be placed?" I said, "Sure." I was like, "But your dog could like do laps, right?" And I was like, "As long as she stays within the perimeter, your dog has all this space. It just has to be something that defines an area from the rest of the room." Okay. She could chew on a bone, play with a toy. One thing to keep in mind, so like my Pit when she was a puppy, I would give her knuckle bones to chew on, and then like it would roll off, and then she would cry, and I would pick it up and give it to her because she knew like she couldn't get off. And then she like picked up on the pattern of like reverse fetch, right, where she would roll it off, and she'd cry, and they'd pick it up and they'd bring it back to her.
She does toys, she pushes them under the couch.
Yeah, so that's what my Pit used to do, and she'd roll it off, right? So eventually I just go, well, if you're gonna roll it off, I'm not gonna give it to you. So just keep an eye out for that. In terms of how big the object needs to be, just big enough for her to lay down comfortably, okay?
Do you recommend starting smaller objects initially because it's a little more defining? Or
you can use whatever. The only thing I recommend is exaggerated like objects, like things she has to like step up on, or like usually dog beds have like a corner or some kind of elevation because it's this kind of motion, as opposed to like a towel. You can actually work the towel right away. It's just expect her to be more kind of pulling back because it's not going to be as defined as if she's stepping up on something. Any questions?
I think that's it.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and release her, and then we're going to start applying the word place now, okay?
Rainey, break.
So what we're going to do is essentially the same concept that we just did, except you're going to say place first, okay? So when you say place, if she just shoots there without the tap, you don't tap. She beats the punch. That's what we want her to learn. So that's why we do it reverse, because I want to make sure that the tap does send the dog there, because sometimes you don't have to say something and the dog just goes, oh, there's this thing here, I'm going to just go there. So now I'm not sure if it's the remote or the word. So here, Place. If she shoots there, we don't do anything. Good girl, break, walk away. Otherwise, if I say place and within a half second, there's no response, we would tap. The moment you see her start to shoot there and go there, we lay off the pressure. So I want her to think, the faster I respond to this word of place and get to this object, I can either avoid that entirely or stop it short, okay? So you'll walk and then you'll present her from about 2 squares away.
Place.
Good girl.
Good girl. Good girl.
Good job.
Break, break. Break.
Good. One more.
Different angles.
Yes.
Place. Good girl. Okay, break. Break.
Good. 3 more. Good girl.
Up. Place. Good girl. Okay, break. Break. She's catching on all too much. I'm gonna trigger. Place.
Right. Tip. 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 There we go.
Good girl.
Yeah.
Good girl. Okay, break. Break.
Break. Good girl. 2 more.
Place.
Good girl.
Good girl.
Last one.
Girl. Okay, break. Break. Break.
Good.
Place.
Good.
Place.
Good. There we go. Right there.
Good girl.
So here, instead of repeating, you jump to the remote. Okay, so you cue it once, and then if you feel the need to repeat, that's actually where you just kick off the collar. Because then if you say place, 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 remote, you're going to
Then
create
she's
that
gonna
habit.
wait for it a few times.
Exactly.
Okay.
So now, same concept, you're going to cue the word place, center there, but now you're going to start to walk around. As you're walking around, if she tries to get off, you're going to stop, remote, don't say anything. She should go back on.
Say that again.
You're going to send her place,
Okay.
start walking around. If she steps off as you're walking around, stop moving, tap, no word. She should go back, otherwise help her. Once she's there, continue to walk around until you can create a complete one full circle. Break and remove. Okay? So we're going to teach her to ignore what you're doing, but then also teach her how to self-correct should she step off prematurely. Okay? So break.
Break. Place.
Okay, there she goes. And then now you'll walk around. Tap and stop. Tap. Tap. Tap and a little bit of a pull. Tap. Tap. Good. So here you reset your circle. Try to walk around again. Good. Come to a stop. Breaking backwards.
Break. Break.
Break.
Break.
Good. We're gonna try that 2 more times. Okay.
She hates to be on that side. Place.
Tip. There we go. Tip. 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 Pull. There you go. Good girl.
Good girl.
Walk around. Good. Come to a stop. Good. Break.
Good girl. Break.
1 more.
Place.
Pause right there. Very good. So here, when she steps off, again, no words, tapping. Ideally, we want to see her self-correct, okay? So here, you're doing the tapping, and each time she needed the leash. Once she's really kind of getting a concrete concept of like what this is, you'll see one tap, and she's gonna like start backpedaling onto the object, okay? So this exercise here, the place break exercise, 3 to 5 minutes, once, maybe twice a day, until you get to the point where you want it to be, okay? On average, most people typically send the place from like here, okay? So that's why we start close, and then as the dog gets better at it, we just work our way back. And so eventually, I can send them here, unless you want to be able to send the dog like from anywhere. Then you have to move backwards, gradually making it more complicated. So if she has a difficult time with this distance, I would come in, do more of this from different directions, and then again work our way back to this until she's able to do that, okay? Feel free to prepare food here, high value stuff when she completes the task. And then you would do this separate.
At place and at break.
Correct.
Okay.
And then you can also do stationary work at the same time. So you don't have to do this first and get her perfect at this before you do the next thing. This is its own subject, and then the stationary work is its own subject, okay? So you could do this for 2 to 3 minutes, and then end with her being on place for 30 minutes if you wanted. Or you could do this in the morning, and then for dinner, you decide to send her to place and have her stay there for an hour while you eat dinner, okay? Just making sure to go through the stages. This week's stage is simply always immediately next to you, leash and collar on, and if you get up to go somewhere, get up to like do something, release her first, then get up, and then replace her if you want. Otherwise, she's done, remove your equipment, she's good to go, okay? Questions?
I don't think I have any.
Okay.
I'm sure I'll think of them later.
Yeah, and if you have a question, you know, just shoot me an email.
Okay.
Here with the shaking and stuff, the more you drill this out with having her stay put for a period of time,
She'll be confident, she knows exactly.
she's gonna go over it. She's gonna get over it faster. When my clients see the shaking, they tend to do less, and I tell them you want to do more. Eventually, more gets the dog over the concept. Okay, so the shaking can be in response to the collar. It can also be in response to like being made to stay within a confined space for a period of time. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the uncertainty, because once we got out and we were walking and basically doing the heel stuff, she wasn't nervous at all.
Yeah. Good.
I mean, she would be startled sometimes when she would get tapped, but
Sure.
like generally otherwise, like right after she got tapped, there would be no nervousness at all.
Okay.
She actually would like start walking slower. And the really crazy part was she'd be walking at our side, and she was healing so well, she didn't even need to turn to look. She knew where we were. She could
sure.
hear, feel something.
Yep.
And the craziest part was she wasn't even looking at us, and she was totally confident and walking at like the exact same pace. So.
Yes, dogs are very capable of being aware, because like you said, when you're walking, that the distance of you and the sound, it sounds of a specific volume. It's like my dogs, I used to walk the 3 of them off leash, and they all had dog tags. Their dog tags sounded a certain way when they were here. So if I was walking, my Chihuahua decided to pee on a pole, it would get a little bit quieter, so I knew somebody was off. And I would turn, sure, there he is peeing on the pole. So I'd correct him and come running back, right? So dogs, same thing, they're able to become aware of that stuff. So that's why I tell people this is about mental control, not about physical control. I want the dog to like opt to make these decisions and pay that much attention. Okay?
This one's a little easier just because there's like less variables. It's in a confined space. It's sort of a controlled situation.
Sure.
The heel stuff really like raises more of like the unknowns, where like you're walking with her, she's healing, she's doing great, she's being totally obedient, but like she decides she has to pee.
Sure.
And do you just let her pee?
I correct that.
No, you correct.
Because logically, when we take our dogs to walk, it's the potty break. So that's why I would start the potty break first. But like, let's say you do that, on the walk, 10 minutes in, she goes to pee and mark. I correct that, and I walk a little bit further, 5-10 paces, stop, break, and then let her pee. Okay? So I'm putting it on our terms, because for you would think, oh, she's just peeing, she's not doing anything bad, right?
No, she's marking, she's sniffing for other dogs, and then
She's doing something else
Yeah.
outside of the command. So if we excuse it, she doesn't think like, oh, you're excusing this because it's me having to pee. she's just thinking, oh, I chose to do something while under command and it went without consequence. So if I could pee on anything, I can bark anything, I can jump on anything while under command. So it's always super black and white. And I'm not a jerk about it. Like, you know, I go, okay, the dog's gonna pee. I'm gonna walk a little bit. I correct them, walk a little bit further, break. So it's just on my terms. And eventually she's gonna stop that behavior and then like learn to take advantage of the time that she's given the opportunity to do so. Okay? Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Good.
This one's actually more straightforward.
Yeah, this is pretty simple. The heels, I think the recall is probably the most complicated one. It's because it's very coordination heavy. But once you get it down, it's pretty simple. Heel is just hard because you're kind of going back and forth and stuff. But this is definitely like one of the easiest things to teach for a dog. So
We'll see how she does. She's actually doing recall now in the dog park the way that like we first taught it to her, which was a hand signal. We actually didn't even use a bird. It was a hand signal. The first trainer we went to one session with and then never saw again after like maybe a month or two after we got her. We would teach her by holding our hand out, and she would come running to us, and we'd just grab her collar and give her a treat. When we say come at the dog park, completely would ignore us. But if I get down on my knees and I hold my hand out like that, she comes sprinting over me from the opposite side of the dog park.
interesting. Yeah, because you think you got a treat or something.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I don't give her treats anymore.
Yeah.
I praise her,
Yeah.
but she reacts, so maybe that's a good thing. It's a good
I mean, it's
foundation
good. It's good until like one day when it's not.
Oh, yeah, when like there's other dogs around, there's distraction, yeah, totally.
Or she can't see you,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
if you don't have the visual. So,
I'm just hoping that bodes well for her.
yeah, no, it's good because she's got a good foundation. You know, so I'm not against positive reinforcement. It's a great tool, but it falls short when the dog doesn't do it, right? Or
And
like
there's a situation where there's something else that's a higher reward that
exactly.
allows you not to.
Yeah, so it's great because it does make everything easier. Next class, hopefully, weather's good. We can be at Oz.
It ended up getting nice outside.
I know, right?
I'm sure it'll probably rain again after I said that.
So we'll work on the second half of heel. Class 4 would most likely then be recall with remote collar.
Okay.
So that if you don't have one already, you'll want a 30-foot regular like nylon leash or whatever. They're like $8 to $12, nothing fancy. You know, on Amazon.
How long did you say it was?
30 feet.
30 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't want a flexi leash. You want it's like a regular leash, flat nylon.
We have like a really crappy 30-foot one.
That's fine.
It's like super basic.
Yeah, that's fine. Because you're only going to use it for while you're teaching recall, then it's done.
Okay.
So that works. As long as it's 30 feet at minimum.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, so heel, we're doing heel part 2 for the next one?
Correct.
And then recall.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So then ideally we'd be back at Oz Park because I think it's supposed to rain for the rest of the week or something like that. So hopefully we just get it out of the system.
So we would just meet at House Park?
Correct. Yeah.
Cool.
And we'll confirm with you as well.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, cool.
Good job.
Awesome. Break. 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 Good girl.